Hello everybody and welcome to my 100k hit point plus Necromancer tank build for PvP. Now this is a build that I put together on the public test server, and unfortunately I don't have any of the characters required or any of the gear required to play this on the live server. However, I did want to share this theory build with you guys because it is something that I kind of worked up, and it is a pretty cool build. It is a maximum health tank build that can actually deal some damage. It has fantastic sustain, absolutely insane amounts of healing power, and yeah, this build is really durable. I mean, when you're in the Goliath form, you've got 100k plus HP, and look at the damage we can do, man. We can actually wipe the flag with a 100k HP build. I think this is really cool to see. So this build definitely utilizes the Necromancer kit, and just because the Necromancer kit is so effective at playing this max hit point kind of style of build, I think that the Necromancer can pull off a build like this better than probably most of the other classes. They just don't have as many hit point based heals as the Necromancer does. And yeah, I'm just using as many of them as I can on this build, and utilizing, of course, that hit point based ultimate to deal some pretty serious damage when we're in the Goliath, because we get an HP based dot on everything around us that increases as our hit points go up, and I'm utilizing a lot of different sets in order to keep damage up on this build. If we didn't have the sets doing our work for us, we wouldn't be able to have that offensive pressure that we do. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this build. I hope that it gives you some cool ideas for your own tank Necromancers. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, guys, let's take a look at this build. So to begin, I am an Imperial on this build, and Imperial is the best race choice for two reasons. The first big one is that Imperial gets the highest hit point base value in the game. They get 2k additional hit points. No other race in the game gets that much HP, so that's going to be the first reason, because of course we're playing that max HP spec. And the second big reason that Imperial is a great choice is because of its Red Diamond passive. The Red Diamond passive actually reduces the cost of your ultimates as well as all your other abilities by 4%, and because we're using the Bone Goliath as the ultimate of choice on this build, Imperial's going to help make that a little bit cheaper. Now, Nord is also a fantastic option for a build like this. You just want to change up a few of your traits if you go Nord, and you should have very, very similar stats to the Imperial. Honestly, between the two, they're probably both 50-50 toss-up. So let's take a look at the max stat on this build. So to start off, we got that 64 points in health. We've got a whopping 60k hit points on this build, almost 61k HP on this spec. 11.5k magicka and 12.5k stamina as well. But yeah, just rocking that huge max HP value. Necromancer has got a ton of heals that scale off of max health. So a max health Necromancer is actually one of, if not the best max health spec in the game. To be honest, man, Necromancer is not really the best at world PvP, but when it comes to a tank perspective, it has a very powerful kit that synergizes really well with a high hit point value. Now let's take a look at the sustain side of things. I'm actually going to buff up with the pet and everything, the potion as well, so you guys can see the fully buffed sustain. 2,369 magicka recovery and 1570 stamina recovery with 644 health recovery. Absolutely fantastic sustain for a tank build. Now, we have really small magicka and stamina pools, but the reason we can get away with that is because the sustain on this build is going to be so good. Necromancer's class skills also cost very little resource compared to the other classes, so that helps us get away with the smaller pools as well. Now, the health recovery is not super huge on this spec. Just have it here because we have the Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch on. The magicka recovery is definitely the most important aspect of this build, and that's simply because we have majority magicka costing skills, and we're going to need to use them to stay alive on the HP Necro. Now, taking a look at our weapon spell damage and our weapon and spell crit, everything is pretty baseline here. 1593 spell damage, 1537 weapon, and around 20% crit for both. These crit rates will not really affect our outgoing damage because our damage is really determined by the poisons and the sets that we're wearing. But when it comes to our healing power, this 20% baseline can actually go up to almost 40% healing crit chance as our health begins to drop. So it's really nice for our healing to have a little bit of crit rate as well. And then our physical and spell resistance on this build, when we buff up, guys, 32k spell resist, 31.5k physical resist, and almost 3k crit resist. Now, not super crazy resists, but sitting at just about soft cap, and the 3k crit resist. With all the healing power we have on this build, it makes us very, very tanky. Now, we could actually drop our resists a little bit lower and go even higher HP on this build, but I did want to have around that 30k plus resistance line, just because we are in heavy armor and we are playing a tank build. I thought having the soft cap resists at least would be a good idea, and then of course we just invested everything else into that hit points. Now, taking a look at the Mundus we're using, we have got the Lord Mundus, and this is definitely the Mundus to go, I think, for this build. The reason I went with the Lord Mundus is because I wanted to have that additional armor as well. So I had a choice between the Protective and the Jewelry and the Lord Mundus, or I had a choice between the Lady Mundus for the resists and then Healthy in the Jewelry. And you actually get a lot more stat-wise going for Protective in the Jewelry, so that's why we went this route here. I am also a Stage 4 Vampire on this build. You don't need to be a Vampire for this spec, but one of the best skills that we can use is a Vampire skill, and it synergizes really good with the alt gen that we're going for on this build. So it's really up to you guys if you want to have the Vampire or not. We'll talk about what you want to change in your skill kit if you don't be a Vampire on this bad boy. And then finally, we have got the Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, and this is definitely the food of choice for the build. We get that max health and then all 3 recoveries. Yeah, really, really nice stuff. We get the sustain across the board, and the HP, of course, so important for the build too. And the potion we're using is the Crown Tri Restoration Potion. We actually don't need our weapon or our spell damage buff at all. We don't need any of our crit buffs, so we don't really need any buffs from the potions. Going for the Tripod, I think, is the best option, simply because we get the health, magicka, and stamina return, as well as all of our recovery buffs, which is going to be really effective on the Necromancer, who has pretty high base recovery stats to begin with. So let's take a look at the gear we're running on this build, and for a 60k HP build, this build actually has some semi-decent firepower, and it's because of all the sets we're using and the combination of skills that we use to bring that firepower together. But I thought this was a really cool build because we had not only a lot of healing power, a lot of HP, and a lot of durability, but we have some decent firepower as well, which is very, very rare for such a high hit point build. So taking a look at the first set, we have got Valken Scoria, and this is going to give us some max health, as well as an 8% chance when we deal damage over time to proc the Scoria Meteor, dealing almost 12k flame damage to the initial target, and it splashes for a 5k AoE as well on a 5-second cooldown. I actually had a lot of choices for the helm set here. It was really a toss-up between Valken Scoria, Grothdar, and Zon for this build. I wanted to go with the monster set that just gave us some additional pressure and additional damage, and I went with Scoria because we actually have quite a few dots on this spec, and of course we have some abilities that count as damage over time, like the Vampire Drain Tether, so we can get some good Scoria procs. However, if you want to go for another monster set, that definitely works. Scoria just has a lot of synergy because of that 1-piece maximum HP as well, allowing us to push even further. Now, taking a look at our next set, we have the Curse of Dolimish, and this is one of the most interesting max HP sets that I've seen in the game. I don't own this set on live. A big reason why I don't have gameplay footage for this guy is because I don't have a character like this leveled, and I don't actually own 2 of the sets in this build on the live server. So the Curse of Dolimish is one of them. It is a really interesting set. A fully charged melee heavy attack against a stunned or immobilized target will deal a bonus almost 16k physical damage on a 7-second cooldown. We, of course, are going to have a stun on demand on this build, so we can do the stun and then follow it up right away with the heavy attack to actually get a big damage splat. The big reason that I went with this set, of course, is just to give us that burst. It's something that the tank does not have, and that kind of a tooltip on a burst damage splat like that is really, really nice. Now, the next set that we've got is on our back bar here, and it's actually the 5-piece Icy Conjurer set. Now, this does not seem at first glance like a good option for a max health build, but hear me out, guys. We get maximum magicka, spell damage, and spell penetration. The max mag, the spell damage, not really super great for the build, but that little bit of spell penetration does actually affect the build because we do have some outgoing spells, quite a few outgoing spell attacks, and that's going to be a decent damage increaser, as well as a damage increaser to our Scoria and the Icy Conjurer set itself. And then finally, on the 5-piece, when we apply a minor debuff to our opponent, we summon the Ice Wraith, and it will deal a 26k Frost Dot over 8 seconds, on a 12-second cooldown. So this has a much higher cooldown than the previous Dolimish set that we're running. However, the amount of damage over time on this tooltip is absolutely insane. A 26k dot, that is some of the highest tooltip damage out of any damage over time set in the game. Probably the highest tooltip damage out of any dot set. So really huge stuff coming out of this set here. And we can apply it really reliably with our back bar sword and board minor maim off our heroic slash. So we actually have great control over proccing this as well. So we can just set really nice combos between this and the Dolimish on this build. And of course, this can proc our Valkynscoria as well. Now, the last set that we have is actually the Endurance set for some extra max health on this build, and this is just on our primary front bar, which is actually kind of our healing bar. We've got two sets of bars. One is kind of the damage support bar, and then the other one's going to be the primary healing bar, but both bars are going to be very tanky on this build. And yeah, we went with the Endurance with the Healthy Enchant, of course. The reason we went Endurance here is just because we wanted to push more max HP on the front bar. It gives us a lot better scaling on all our heals on this bar. Now, taking a look at the poisons on this build, guys, I've actually gone with the Crown Lethal Poison on both bars here. You can even go for the Draining Health Poisons if you want to. It does the same thing as this guy, but lasts a little bit less and heals you for the amount of damage done. But we have such powerful heals off our HP-based skills. Honestly, we don't really need anything additional healing power-wise. I like the Lethal Poison because it is the best damage option. We've got Sword and Board, we can do the animation cancels, and we've got a decently extensive Sword and Board kit on the back bars, so we can get a lot of procs on these poisons. We should have a pretty decent uptime on them on this spec. And of course, both of these poisons can proc Valkynscoria as well, which is very important too. Now, taking a look at the traits on it, guys, on the front bar here where we're focusing on the max HP, I've actually gone for Impenetrable with the shield just for a little bit more crit resist. And then on the Sword of Endurance, I actually went for Sharpened. And I went Sharpened on this bar because this is where your primary attacking is going to be coming from because we have all our heals on this bar. So all of the heals on this build are actually active attacking heals, so we have to have a target or corpses on the ground in order to heal ourselves. So I think that Sharpened was the best bet here, just to give us the best outgoing damage possible. Of course, the Sharpened is going to help out a lot with the Curse of Dolimish proc and with the Icy Conjurer. We'll just have a little bit more damage as well as on our Scoria too. Taking a look at the back bar, I've gone with Defending on it just to give us a little bit more additional bulk on our primary just kind of buff/defense bar. And of course, we've gone with Impenetrable on the shield again with the max health enchant just to give us that bulk all around that we're looking for on this build. I didn't go with any Sturdy because we can block on this spec, but honestly, you don't need to block. We have that huge hit point pool, really strong healing power. Blocking is not going to be the most important aspect of this build at all. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, we have gone with full protective on the Icy Conjurer. Now, we had to go Icy Conjurer jewelry because it is a light armor set, so this is the only way we could fit it into this heavy armor build. And I went full protective to give us that almost soft cap physical spell resist value that you see on this spec. If we didn't go full protective here, we would have around 24-25k physical spell resist on this build, so quite a bit less, but we'd have a little bit more HP. We'd probably have 4 or 5k more HP at the most. Honestly, guys, I think that the protective trait is so overtuned in this game. It's hard for a tanky build like this not to justify it, even when we could stack the HP, which is very justifiable. Yeah, I would say definitely go protective if you can. I think it is the much better trait option in the long run, and our healing power is already cranked up so high on this build because our HP is going to be so high, so we don't have to worry about it. Now, taking a look at the rest of our gear, it is all impenetrable, minus the 2 Valkynscoria. I'm terribly sorry. I actually put the 2 Divines here. I didn't mean to. I just forgot to transmute these on the PTS, but don't worry about it. It just means that our stat page is going to be shy just a little bit of impen. So fully buffed, we actually have 3,400 impen on this build, which is quite a bit more than we have here. So, yeah, just a little mistake on my part. Now, of course, we've gone with full maximum health enchants on the gear as well. Here's one place that I'm going to say if you want to go for the Tri-Stat Hacky Joes, you actually can here. If you feel like you really need more Magicka or Stamina to work with, you can go with the Tri-Stat Glyphs. But honestly, if you learn to just kind of adjust your resources, and we have such good sustain on this build, you don't need to have the bigger max stat pools. They don't really benefit you damage-wise at all because we don't get a lot of damage or healing out of any of that stuff. So it's just about the actual pool size itself. I would recommend sticking with the max health if you can. If you want to try this in no CP, you might need to go for a few Tri-Stat Hacky Joes just to give you that Stamina Mag pool that you're looking for. Alright, let's take a look at the skills we're running on this build. Now, I'm actually going to start off on our front bar here, which is the higher hit point bar, and we're going to take a look at the first skill we've got, and this is the Hungry Scythe. So this is going to be your primary heal on the build pretty much. We have got a 2.8k damage tooltip, almost 2.9k magicka damage, so not really insane damage out of this, but a 9k heal on the first enemy hit, and then an additional 3k heal per additional enemies up to 5 times, and we get a 1400 health every 1 second heal over time for 5 seconds. This heal, of course, scales off our maximum health, so this is why we have such a strong heal on this bar. If we hit all 5 targets, we have got a 25k heal on this build, and absolutely an insane amount of healing power on this bad boy. So yeah, this is pretty much our first and primary heal for this build, but we've got a lot of healing power outside of this. So taking a look at the next skill, we've got Invigorating Drain, and this has a ton of synergy for this build as well. The first big thing, this is another health-based heal over time, 24% of your missing health every 1 second. Really nice stuff. And then we generate 5 ultimate every 1 second while the tether holds as well. This is really great because we're playing a ultimate generation Goliath focused build. We've got a lot of alt gen on this build, and this is going to help us get into that Goliath form faster every time. And then finally, this will also stun our opponent. Now, this is the only stun we have, and if you're not going to run Vampirism, you can run the Sword and Board stun here, either the Defile or the Gap Closer. I think the Gap Closer might be a better option just because you have a little bit more speed then. But it's very important that we have that stun so we can hit people with our Dolemish set with that heavy attack afterwards, allowing us to get that big combination damage on this spec. Now, the next ability we have is Necrotic Potency, and this just plays more into the ultimate generation of this build. We siphon a corpse on the ground, we grant 6 ultimate, and almost 3k health every 1 second for 2 seconds per an additional corpse. So we can get a pretty decent heal over time on this. If we siphon 6 corpses, it's a 12-second heal over time. Now, we don't generate a super huge amount of corpses on this build. We've got Blast Bones, the Armor, and the Mender, so we're not running maximum pets, but we are pretty close to max pet, so we should get a lot of use out of Necrotic Potency on this build for the ultimate gen and that healing as well. And then while slotted, we have a reduction in the amount of damage we take by 3%, also really nice for this spec, especially on our front healing bar here, just adding a little bit more bulk. Now, taking a look at the next ability we have got this Spirit Guardian. It is a 1.1k heal every 2 seconds for 16 seconds when we summon it. This, of course, will create a corpse, giving us synergy with the Necrotic Potency, and while active, 10% of the damage we take is instead transferred to the Spirit Guardian, so it's pretty much a 10% damage reduction. Really nice. It's just going to add more bulk yet again, and then having this healing skill slotted on the front bar ensures that on our front bar here, we get that bonus to our healing critical chance as our health begins to drop. Now, the next skill that we've got is Structured Entropy, and this is here pretty much for the passive slot. 8% additional max health on this bar. It makes all our heals stronger to have higher HP on this bar, so it's very important. Now, something I do want to say is that this is access to Major Sorcery, and it's a little bit of a heal over time and a damage over time, but the damage on this and the heal on this is very, very low, and we don't need that Major Sorcery buff, so it's mostly a passive slot, and for the most part, you will not be using this ability in combat. And then finally, guys, for the ultimate, I've gone with Temporal Guard on the front bar here, and that's because we get that passive minor protection on the front bar. So we get 8% for minor protection, 3% from the potency, plus the 10% on the Spirit Guardian. That is 21% damage reduction on our front bar here. Very, very valuable, I think, for this build, guys. Absolutely incredible just for giving us that bulk and allowing us to just have a lot of tank ability outside of block by spamming the Hungry Scythe. With our Mag Sustain and the Hungry Scythe healing us for so much, we actually have a lot of durability on this spec. Now, taking a look at the back bar, this is kind of our offensive set bar slash a little bit of a support bar as well. So the first ability we have is Pierce Armor, and the reason I went with Pierce Armor is because it offers us both that physical and that magical debuff. 5,280 reduced physical spell resist on our target for 12 seconds, All of our proc sets are going to deal more damage because of this, and that is really important. So it's a very important debuff, and that's pretty much the reason we've got it here. Now, the next skill we've got is Heroic Slash, and this has two big functions for this build. The first thing about it is that it gives us the Minor Maim. We are running Icy Conjurer on this bar, so this will proc our Icy Conjurer. It is our only minor debuff on the build, so we can reliably proc Icy Conjurer with this on our back bar, giving us a lot of control over this set, which is really, really nice. Now, we also gain Minor Heroism when we use this ability, just playing more into the alt gen of this build, giving us easier access to that Goliath ultimate, which is really important. And then finally, we also get a little bit of a snare and the damage that it does. Not a huge amount of damage on this spec at all, but the snare is going to be nice too. So yeah, just a great kind of dot skill, I guess, with the Icy Conjurer set, and a buff skill as well. And then finally, we have got Blighted Blastbones on the back bar here, and Blighted Blastbones, I think, is a fantastic option for two reasons. The first being that Major Defile. It is so important, especially on a build like this where we have lower damage. The Major Defile is going to help us close those kills, so we're going to want to make sure to keep cycling the Blighted Blastbones on people as often as possible to keep that debuff on them so they cannot come back from the damage that we deal. Now, the tooltip on the Blighted Blastbones isn't crazy high, so we're not using it for the damage, but the fact that this is a really quick disposable corpse means that we can just pull a lot of healing over time and a lot of ultimate from it over the course of a fight because of necrotic potency. So just a lot of synergy with what we're going for in our kit on this build as well. And then the next ability we have is Hexproof. This is going to be a 4 negative effect removal, and it reduces the cost of all of our abilities by 3%. Very important for both of these aspects on this build. The negative effect removal is so strong. We have such powerful healing on this build. We can definitely spam Hexproof on it, and that's a big issue I've had with the squishier Necromancers I've played. Hexproof is not the best option on them because you don't have as much healing as you need. We have so much healing over time and so much burst healing power. Hexproof is such a fantastic skill, and because our hit point pool is so large, it comparatively costs very little to our hit point pool, so that's really important as well. And then the second big thing is that we get the reduced cost on all our abilities by 3%. This includes our ultimate, which is also reduced from being an Imperial as well, so it allows us to have a 235 cost on the Ravenous Goliath, just giving us easier access to jumping into that Goliath yet again. And then the next ability we have is Beckoning Armor, and this is pretty much going to be your armor buff. I went with Beckoning Armor because it pulls people into you. This build is a tank build, and it's slow. I think that the pull is the most valuable morph. We could go for the decreased cost on our Blighted Blastbones and stuff, but they're really cheap skills. It honestly does not help that much. I think the Beckoning Armor is just the best synergy with that armor buff, getting that pull on a ranged opponent. Really, really nice to pull them into a deadly area. And then finally, guys, we have got the Ravenous Goliath, and we will use the ultimate to show you guys our total HP value as well as our healing tooltips with the Goliath out. But to start, we'll talk a little bit about this ultimate. We get a bonus 30k HP when we use this ultimate. It allows us to push over 100k hit points on this build after all our percent bonuses to hit points. And then while we're in the ultimate, our light attacks restore 1337 health, and our heavy attacks restore 3344, and we deal 3768 damage to everyone around us each second, and this scales off the maximum health. So as you can see here, if we switch to the front bar where we have more HP, the values of all of these go up, and we'll take a look at these tooltips once we're in the Goliath too, because that's actually what the tooltip values will be. Alright, so let's take a look at the Goliath on the front bar here. Yeah, 7k damage every second to our opponents, and we heal for that value as well. This is going to be an incredibly strong AoE around us and an incredibly strong heal over time. Synergize this with all our healing power, etc. We become very strong, and look at that, 15.6k Hungry Scythe with an additional 2,500 health every 1 second. The necrotic potency is going to be like 5k health every 1 second. This makes this build incredibly tanky. While you're in the Ravenous Goliath, you literally should not die against, like, even Zergs, man, because this becomes even better of an ultimate the more opponents that you have on you. Of course, we're out of the ultimate now, so the tooltips will be a little bit lower, but yeah, man, really fantastic ultimate for this build. I know you guys may have saw the Health Necromancer and thought, hey, he's going to be going for that Bash Necro. No, we actually just went for the other morph, and we went for that max health stealing spec. and we actually deal a lot of damage with it. You can wipe resources with this. I honestly think you can apply a lot of pressure on a tank build to a group with a build like this, so I really like the ultimate for that reason. Alright, so let's take a look at the champion points we're running on this spec. In our tower tree, we've got 51 in the Warlord for the break free and nothing else here. We won't be bashing a ton, we won't be sprinting a ton, we'll be breaking free the most for sure, so that is the most important. In the lover tree, we've got a lot of points. Because this is such a regen heavy build, we got 64 Arcanist, 49 Mooncalf, and 23 in tenacity for that heavy attack restore. I've got nothing in healthy because we are a vampire. If you don't want to run vampire on this build, I would actually recommend putting a few points in here if you can. Taking a look at the Shadow Tree, we've got 51 Shadow Ward, 7 in Tumbling, and 25 in Befoul. Big focus on Shadow Ward for that block. When we're using a defensive utility, block is going to be the one we use the most of, and it's going to be our most effective because we're running the dual sword and board. So really nice to have quite a few points here. A little bit in Tumbling because we do have to roll dodge in PvP, but not super often, and we do have a Purge as well, which is going to be really easy to spam on this build. So we have access to Snare immunity and Immobilize immunity through that too. And then finally the Befoul for that Blast Bones, man. This build does not have the crazy highest damage, so having that extra healing debuff is just going to allow us to apply more pressure over a period of time and allow us to actually close a kill on a tank build like this. Now, taking a look at the Apprentice Tree, we've got 33 Elemental, 32 in Spell Erosion, and 4 in Blessed. So just a few points in Elemental Expert and Spell Erosion to bulk our outgoing Magical as well as our Spell Penetration. And the reason I have no points in Elfborn is because we have such a low crit rate and our proc sets cannot crit. So these are the only ways to increase the proc set damage is by going here and, of course, Master at Arms. So that's why we've done it that way. A little bit in Blessed for a little bit of healing power because I had some points. But moving on to the Atronach Tree, we've got 81 points for Master at Arms, 24% additional direct damage. This is going to affect all of our proc sets except for the Icy Conjurer. Really important there, I think, to have a lot of points in Master at Arms, especially for the Dolimish and the Valkynscoria Burst. And then taking a look at our Ritual Tree, we've got 56 in Thaum, 32 Mighty, and 32 in Piercing. Big focus on Thaum because of the damage over time bonus that we get to the poisons as well as the Icy Conjurer. So pretty much half of our outgoing damage is affected by Thaum here, so we put a lot of points in there. And then 32 Mighty, 32 Piercing to kind of mimic what we have on the Magicka side of things, increasing our bulk outgoing physical damage as well as our penetration. Now, the important passives we get here, I think, are the Perfect Strike as well as the Spell Precision passive in the other tree, just for a little bit more physical and spell crit. But then we also get the Last Stand. When we fall below 20% health, we gain that Major Heroism, granting us 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 8 seconds, and this can occur every 20 seconds. Huge synergy on this build because we're also a vampire with a huge hit point pool, so we can really work on death on this build. So if we drop below that 20%, we'll have Major Minor Heroism, and we'll have the alt return from the corpses as well. Now, taking a look at the next tree we've got here, we've got this Steed, 51 Ironclad, 60 Resistant, and 15 in Spell Shield. Big focus on Ironclad Resistant because critical damage and direct damage are the biggest sources of burst in PvP. A few points in Spell Shield just to give us a little bit of front heavy bulk to our Spell Resist. Taking a look at the Lady Tree, we got 32 Hardy, 32 Elemental, and 31 Thick Skin. Really even spread here between decreasing incoming physical, magical, and damage over time. The reason I went so heavy on the Thick Skin, even though we have a Purge, is simply because, well, we're playing a tank build. We're going to have so many negative effects on us that we probably won't be able to purge them all off all the time. So having some Thick Skin is definitely going to help on a build like this. And then finally, in the Lord Tree, guys, we've got 37 Quick Recovery and 12 in Heavy Armor Focus. Quick Recovery to give us that bonus to our healing done. That's what allows us to have such a massive tooltip on our heals on this build. And then Heavy Armor Focus for that little bit of physical resist when we're wearing our 5-piece Heavy. And that is the build, ladies and gentlemen. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you guys enjoyed the build. I apologize again for not having PvP footage of this bad boy. I likely won't be playing it on the live server either, but I did really want to share it with you guys just to show you guys a cool little build. Honestly, I think Tank Necromancer is really where Necromancer shines, and in PvP tanks, you know, they definitely have a place, but they're not as usable as maybe some more well-rounded specs that can do the tank and the damage too. So I thought this was a really cool way to go about a max HP tank and just put some damage on it as well. You obviously won't be able to kill other tanky opponents with this, but if you come by an enemy squishy, you actually might have the firepower to take down an opponent. So I think that is pretty cool, especially considering how much bulk we have on this spec. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like I said, if you like the video, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content, so look forward to around 5 videos a week from me on YouTube. And of course, I stream live on Twitch, so if you guys want to see some live gameplay from me, you can always check out a link to my Twitch down in the description below. If you guys are interested in sending in any clips for the top 5 PvP battles, or if you guys want to send in a build to be featured on the channel, you guys can send that in to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. More information and links, of course, in the description below for you guys. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 14 days via the link below. No credit card to sign up, so if you guys want to give them a shot, no harm, no foul if they don't do what you're hoping to get out of them. And finally, guys, if you really love the channel and you guys want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Everybody that helps out, really, you guys make a big difference. Without you, I would not be able to do this job that I love to do. So thank you guys so much just for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again next time.